into some Florida State versus Miami. Why don't we?
Oh, God.
Just like Austin has in his tag here under his name, we need a miracle. We need a miracle here.
Look, can I start with some optimism? Let's do this.
All right, yeah, you start with optimism, and then I'll give you a reality check.
Okay.
All right, let's do that. You go ahead.
Optimism. The
Okay.
top-ranked team that Florida State has played each year under Mike Norvell, they've at least played close. If you go back to the UNC game, that first time when they came into Docamo ranked 5th, they won. They played Notre Dame close at home next year. Then they played Clemson close at home. They're at least able to stay close in the best games of the year. They may not always win, but they can at least get close.
Also, like those all came at home, though. Sorry.
Well, the LSU game was neutral, if you want to count last year's game. And there's another one. I'm forgetting one of the games. But anyways, Miami is wearing all black uniforms. Do you know the last time they wore all black uniforms?
Was that that wasn't a Georgia Tech game, was it?
It was the Georgia Tech game.
It was a Georgia Tech game on Thursday night last year.
And do you know the last time they wore alternate uniforms against Florida State?
I don't know because it's Adidas and they're all atrocious. So
the Jalen Ramsey game or the Dalvin Cook breakout game in 2014, 10 years ago.
Oh.
So I'm just saying, there's a little history on Florida State's side here that they could do something. They could.
Mm-hmm. Looking for some spiritual miracles.
Absolutely.
What we're looking at here. Let's look at some stats here on the Miami Hurricanes before we get going. Number one. Oh, they're number one in points per game. They're at 47 per game there. Also, 2 yards per game, 582. That's their average at the moment. They have an average of 38 pass attempts per game. That's top 20 in college football. Florida State secondary is going to have a strong night in Coral Gables. And then they're number one in passing yards per game, 399. And then looking over at their defense, Miami is only allowing 100, really under 100 yards per game at 98.7. They're a top 15 rushing defense this year. So there's some just fun stats there, and they're all. I mean, it's a number.
Their defense is not that good, though. If we're being completely realistic, like their last 4 games, they're allowing almost 400 yards per game of total offense. Some of that's been through the air, some of that's been on the ground. Their defense is average at best. I'm not sitting here saying Florida State's gonna be able to take advantage of that. Let's not get words twisted.
Yeah, don't get too crazy here.
But I honestly think this is the worst defense Florida State has played this year.
Well, I don't know if it matters just because of that Miami offense. I mean, man, they've been just so potent this year. I mean, just ridiculous. And a lot of it is obviously on the back of Cam Ward, but they've got some really talented skill players. And you look along the offensive line, I think they're giving up less than 2 sacks per game and only about 3 or 4 negative plays per game. So, I mean, they've done a good job of staying ahead of the chains. Florida State's defense, obviously, not so much in the Duke game, but looking back the last couple of weeks before that, struggled immensely to get teams off the field on third down. And now you're going up against Miami, the number 1 third down offense in the country, converting over 60% of the time, which is absolutely ridiculous, and have put up at least 38 points in every game so far. I know the last 3, it's been a little back and forth there, but they've done enough to continue to stay undefeated, and I'm interested to see if it continues on Saturday night because they've just been absolutely hot, and we'll see if Florida State coming off that game against Duke, not a stellar offense, obviously. Maybe that'll give them a little bit of momentum, but either way, I mean, we're talking about a defense that gave up 500 yards to Clemson a couple of weeks ago, and this Miami offense is a lot better than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Cam Ward's having a season, gentlemen. It's crazy that we were talking about him this offseason. Maybe there's some contemplation that maybe he would have been Florida State's starting quarterback, but got DJ, and this is where you're at. But, man, could you imagine Cam Ward? I mean, as we've learned, though, wouldn't be the savior of everything. Maybe he is. Maybe he would be.
He would not be.
Definitely offensive line-wise.
He'd save a lot.
He'd say, he would say, just like Jordan Travis. I guess you could say, he definitely would have. There'd be more wins on the board for Florida State, but like, the offensive line for Florida State, atrocious. That's why you have to have a guy like Jordan Travis, right?
I mean, he turns the ball over. He puts it in some really bad positions at times, but he does a great job of staying alive in the pocket, continuing to keep his eyes downfield, doing everything to make the play up until the last second possible. And it's created a lot of highlights for Miami so far through 7 games. And, that's a big reason that Cam Ward now among the front runners for the Heisman Trophy. And, you look at Saturday night, a rivalry game against Florida State. This is a potential he's already had a couple, but maybe another Heisman moment for Cam Ward to stamp.
Yeah, he's above 2,500 yards in passing, 68.7 in completion percentage, 24 touchdowns.
Which I believe is first in the country.
Wow. Wouldn't be a shocker. 24 touchdowns and 5 interceptions there for Miami starting quarterback. And, of course, got some receiving targets as well that he's been able to utilize a ton with Restrepo and Horton there at wide receiver. Restrepo actually nearing 700 yards.
I think the easiest way to put it is Cam Ward has 24 touchdown passes and Florida State has 11 total touchdowns.
That's a good summary. That's like ChatGPT summarized Florida State's offense to just Miami and what Cam Ward's doing.